I am doing a basic tutorial on how to use Soap Calc and understanding some basic properties of soaping oils. And I am doing this tutorial with one person in mind who needs some help. So I hope that you can learn from this if you're deciding to watch it. If you're not the person intended and you still have questions, ask. I'll try and answer them. And if you don't want to watch, don't watch. So anyway, we're going to get started. Before you can use Soap Calc, you will need to understand some basic properties of soap oils. And you can get a beginner's guide to soap making oils on Soap Queen or on Love and Soap. And this is essential to understanding what goes into your soap and why you're using it. So I know that the links up here aren't very clear, so I will post them down in the Love below. That's the description box. So the next thing moving on is actually Soap Calc. And to use Soap Calc, we're going to go over the properties of it, but you'll also need to know your mold size. So to calculate your mold size, you're going to take the size of your mold, the width times the height times the depth, and multiply that times 0.4, and that will give you the amount of ounces or grams that you're going to use. Actually, it's ounces. If you use grams, you're going to have to convert it. I live in the United States. We don't use grams or metrics that often, so we probably won't. I'm not really going to go over that. The first thing you're going to want to do is check your type of lye. NaOH is sodium hydroxide. That's what we use for making bar soap. KOH is for making liquid soap. You might use a combination of the two if you're making cream soap, or some people make shaving soaps using both. We're just using NaOH for bar soap today. You can choose the weight of your oils. As I said, when you make a recipe and you need to know how big your mold is, it's width times height times depth times 0.4, and that's just for a square mold. If you're using a round mold, the formula is different and has a little more algebra in it. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I will find a link to a resource for measuring a round mold, and I'll put it down in the love below. So I use ounces, never use pounds, even if you're making 5 pounds of soap, okay? That's still, and it has to do with, let's see, pounds. So say you're making 5 pounds of soap. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. Well, Soap Calc has changed in the last couple of days, and something seems to be wrong with the pounds weight of oil. So that's fine because we're making small batches. We don't need big pounds anyway, so we're going to use ounces. Let's do 16 ounces. That's 1 pound of oils. That does not include your water. This is just how much oils you're going to use, and that will have to do with this section over here. So water as percentage of oils is set at 38. When people say that they are soaping with full water, that's what they mean. I know that some of the older soapers do a water to lye ratio or a lye concentration. I find that's a little bit too much math for me, so I just say water as percentage of oils. And if I want to reduce it a little bit, I'll reduce it to 35. I do know people who soap as low as 30% water, but I don't because I'm at high elevation. I live at over 4,000 square feet. I need the extra water, otherwise my soap batter gets thick too quickly. Okay, so superfat. Superfat is how much oil that you have left over in your soap after your oils saponify. You want to leave it at 5%, and you may want to go 6, 7, possibly 8. If you are using something like shea butter, or if you're using avocado oil or other oils that don't saponify well, you're going to want to leave it lower, otherwise your soap will be greasy. I wouldn't really go below 5 or 6%, otherwise you take a risk of running, or you run the risk of having a more brittle soap, one that is going to crack easily, or might be lye heavy, and that's not what you want. You'll have to shred it, and the only thing it's good for is laundry soap. So make sure your super fat is set at 5, 6, 7, no higher than that, especially, or 8. No higher than 7 in my opinion. That's what I like. You'll just have to try and see what you like. Now for your fragrance, ounces per pound. This is per pound of oil, not per pound of soap. I like to go about 0.08. 0.8, where is my number lock? 0.8. Sometimes I'll go a full ounce per pound. If it's a weak scent, it just depends. Every fragrance will tell you how much you're allowed to use. What you do is you take your pounds of oils, 16 times 0.06, so it's 0.96. So we can say, well, 0.96 is almost an ounce, so we can say that it's 1 ounce per pound of oils that we want to put for fragrance. And this will calculate when we calculate. Okay, so this is how you set up your basic properties for what you want your loaf. Now here is your acid profile. If you click these little eyes, they will take you to Wikipedia, and they tell you what all the different soap making values are, like what stearic acid does, what palmitic acid does, what lauric acid does, and it gives you a number, and that's pretty much, I don't really know how they come up with the numbers for that, but it will figure into your final soap. The ones that we're concerned with really are hardness, and if you float, you can see that it has, up on the top left there, it comes up and it gives you an idea of what you want for a range. This is where a lot of people get confused. Hardness, it says 29 to 54 higher is harder. That does not mean you're going to get a harder bar. Okay, what it does mean is that you will have a more brittle bar, it has more staying power against hard water. It does not mean that you're going to get a harder brick-like bar. If you to get a harder bar, you have to use hard oils like palm oil and coconut oil. But when you use a lot of palm and a lot of coconut, it's going to be drying on the skin, and it's going to make your bar soft because coconut and palm get spongy when they get harder. So anyway. Okay, moving on. Sorry. I don't know how to explain that except that if you use too much coconut or too much palm, it's actually not going to make a brick-like bar. It's going to make it softer. Now I'm speaking from my own experience, and that's just as far as I can go with that one, because the hardness, again, does not relate to the actual hardness of the bar. It just relates to its ability to stand up to hard water. This bar of soap is 5 months old. It has lots of hard oils and butters, and look at how easy it dents even at 5 months of age. The next bar that I'm going to show you is it's about the same age. It has no palm, 20% coconut, some hard oils, and it doesn't dent nearly as much. So I'm trying to move it out of the way of the red here. I think that's from the flash, I'm not sure. But anyway, this one has more liquid oil, and yet it's a harder bar than the other bar, which had lots of hard oils. So hard oils doesn't equal hard bar. Cleansing, again, is how much the oils can pick up from the oil on your skin to remove them. That's like your cleansing value. In my opinion, less is more with this one. The range is 12 to 22. For conditioning, this is the emollient content that stays on the skin. This is why you don't want a super fat too high, because the oils when the soap picks up the oils from your skin and removes it, a little bit of the soap film will stay, and that's called emolliency. That's what helps your skin to feel soft. It helps to lock in the moisture. It helps it to feel really good. But if you have too much super fat or too much non-saponifiable oils, you're just depositing straight oil back onto your skin. Or if you have hard water and you don't have a high enough cleansing value, then too much oil stays on your skin and it feels oily and greasy. It doesn't feel clean. Now, likewise, if you go too high on the cleansing, even if you have a high conditioning number, it's still going to make you feel a little bit weird. So balancing the cleansing to the conditioning, it's a little bit of a balancing act. It's a little bit tricky, but that's what you want to kind of look for, in my opinion. This is what works for me. So bubbly and creamy both relate to the type of lather that you have. bubbly handmade soaps don't bubble up big like detergent soaps do or like body wash does. You do get some nice bubble from it, but it's not a big foamy bubble. There's always going to be some creamy bubble. That's just the nature of the handmade soaps. A lot of people freak out if their creamy is bigger than their bubbly, and I don't know why. It doesn't make it like shaving cream unless you have a really, really big imbalance between the bubbly and the creamy, and that just doesn't usually happen. Not for me anyway. Iodine and INS numbers. Iodine is where you're going to find your soap softness and hardness. Like I said, the hardness is for hard is the ability to stand up to hard water. Iodine, the higher the iodine, the softer the bar is going to be. So you're going to want to keep the iodine down. And the INS number, nobody really knows what INS stands for. It says the commonly ideal number is 160, but there's only one reference to that in a really old Victorian book, so I don't really know where that comes into play. I don't even really pay attention to that. For me, if it falls in the 140s, that's usually okay. Something else that I want to mention about these is that a lot of people tend to think that these numbers, like here for instance, um, let's do olive oil, and let's put it in here because that's a good base oil, and calculate, oops, 100% of our recipe because it's just one oil. See, it populates here the numbers, and since we only have one oil, it tells you what the one oil is. Now let's add coconut to this. Okay, so now let's say that we're doing a 50-50 bar of olive and coconut. Okay, so now we have a hardness of 79, that's the coconut, because that's the one that we put in. But the average is 48. Now remember that if you flip over here, the range that we want is 29 to 54, so our hardness falls right in. Cleansing is 12 to 22. We're way off the chart. Conditioning is 46. It's a little on the low end, especially since our cleansing is so high. This isn't going to be a good soap, in my opinion. But the point I'm getting at here again with these numbers over here is people tend to think that when these numbers are on the low range, that it equals 0. That a cleansing value of 12 would be a 0 cleansing value, that it's not going to cleanse well. And that's not true. It's just that if you're looking for an average within the ranges given, and then that's how you balance your soap. It doesn't matter if your cleansing is 12 or if your cleansing is 22 or if your conditioning is 46 or if your cleansing is 60. Or your conditioning is 60. The whole point is you want to be within the ranges given. That will help to give you a balanced, good soap bar. There's a lot of variation. There's a lot of conditions that are going to affect the way that your soap performs. So all you can do is experiment and see what works for you. And it can be a long process. For me, it took about 4 months to come up with the first soap that I liked. And then here it is a year later, I'm only realizing that that's what I was going for the whole time. So go slow, keep really good notes, and use your soaps and have other people use your soaps, and you'll find what works for you. There is no hard and fast rule about what makes a good soap. These numbers are suggestions, and performance is going to vary. So just keep that in mind. A low cleansing value or low values don't equal 0. It's just a matter of, your mileage will vary.